Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Kim, and I hope you're having a fabulous day today. If you are interested in true crime like I am, I hope that you would consider hitting that subscribe button. But either way, thanks for being here. Today, we're going to be talking about the very mysterious case of poisoning to Eric Miller, the guy that had it all: a beautiful wife, a newborn child. Let's talk about Eric Miller and Ann Miller Kontz. But first, let's talk about our amazing sponsor. Thanks to our sponsor today, Kinder Beauty Box. My new subscribers don't know, but I started my channel by unboxing subscription boxes. I absolutely love subscription boxes, and especially Kinder Beauty Box, because they are a clean, vegan, cruelty-free beauty subscription box, and it is amazing. Subscribers get up to $165 worth of hand-picked skincare, makeup, hair care products, and accessories each month, vetted and selected by two of their co-founders and beautiful women with a passion for cruelty-free clean products. I know exactly what you're thinking. How much are we talking? Money is tight right now. Well, you can get it all for as little as $23 a month. What I'm going to show you today is the first box that everyone gets, and that is the Kinder Faves box, which ships to you right away as soon as your order is placed. It is worth $122. Here's how it ships to you, comes to you. There's an outer box that it comes in, but this is the box itself. Looks like that. And then all of your products are very nicely packaged. First is this glove, and it's a makeup remover, and it's beautiful. It doesn't pull, it doesn't tug. Very nice. The next in here are these under eye pads. They're 100% pure. These things are so amazing. They're so juicy. Can I say that, juicy? I don't know. So I put them under my eyes and they didn't slip. They stayed on and it's beautiful. And I put them back in here, and I put them back in here just so I could do this video. But honestly, I'm going to use them again. Is that gross? I don't know. I don't care. The next item, which is a beautiful product. I put it on my face in the evening. You only need a little bit, and it just, your skin just like sucks it up, and it feels so hydrated. And the oil is made by Dirty Lamb. Eco Lips. It's a lip and cheek tint that I'm wearing today. It's a lipstick blush. Love the size of it as well. It's just a gorgeous color. And then last but not least, Mermaid Milk. It's by Earth Harbor. This is a moisturizer that is very unique because it is a consistency that's a lotion, but it almost melts down to gel-like feeling. All of these products, again, are cruelty-free, vegan. Love it. New subscribers who sign up for 3 or 6 month plans automatically receive a bonus box of $85 with their first shipment. New subscribers get all of the goods. You get all the good stuff. Subscribers will automatically become of the Kinder Club and Smart Earnings Club. Well, I found each month Kinder Beauty will donate a portion of the profits to their premier charity partners. We love that. Last but not least, their marketplace is open to everyone. Get amazing deals on beauty products from the best brands in clean beauty. Plus, if you're a Kinder Beauty subscriber, you can use your reward points towards these amazing purchases. Also, if you sign up using my code KimberlyFlower50, you will receive 50% off your first box. The link will be in the description box. Thanks to Kinder Beauty Box for sponsoring today's video and making it possible. Ann Miller and Eric Miller were married. Ann Miller grew up in New York. Eric grew up in rural Indiana. They both went to Purdue University where they met. They were both science majors. They fell in love head over heels for each other and married in 1992. Now graduated from Purdue and married, they decided they wanted to get their graduate's degree at North Carolina University. They settled in Raleigh, North Carolina. Raleigh has over 100 labs, so it made sense that their careers they picked that they would end up in Raleigh, being they were both science majors. Eric graduated before Anne. Therefore, Eric ended up landing a postdoc fellowship at Chapel Hill, where he was a pediatric AIDS researcher. What is amazing about Eric is he wasn't in it for the money. He just wanted to make a difference. He felt like he could make a real difference with working with pediatric AIDS research with a fraction of the pay from other jobs he was offered, but still, he felt good about it. Anne is still going to school to complete her PhD, so money was tight. Not really planning on this, but Anne became pregnant. They were excited, but it did weigh on them because they didn't feel financially secure at this point. So Anne decided that she would leave the doctorate program and start her career without completing school. She already had her master's in biochemistry, so getting a job in Raleigh with all their labs was pretty easy for her. So she lands a pretty prestigious, high-paying job at GlaxoSmithKline, which is a pharmaceutical company who makes all kinds of medicines like Advil, Zantac, Tums, and Flonase, lots of well-known products. With Anne now landing a good paying job, they were able to buy a beautiful house and were financially stable for once. By most standards, this was an ideal family. That brings us to November 15, 2000. I remember 2000. Do you guys remember when everyone thought their computers were gonna blow up or something? But anyways, Eric, being an amazing dad and hard worker, Anne encouraged him to go out with her coworkers, expand his friend group, and have some fun. Eric agreed and went bowling for a guys' night out. Within an hour of being at the bowling alley, Eric starts feeling ill. His stomach was very upset. He couldn't keep anything down. Even after he got home, Anne, seemingly concerned, decided to take Eric to the hospital. He just didn't know what was wrong and no home remedies were working. The hospital was equally concerned with how ill he was, so they admitted him, hooked him up to IVs so he could get some fluids, and started running a series of tests to see what was going on with Eric. With all their tests, they were still stumped on why Eric was so sick. This went on for over a week with him in the hospital before he started to feel better. Feeling better and the hospital really not knowing what was wrong with him, but they did release him on November 24th. The doctors just chopped it up to a virus of some sort. Eric was still pretty weak, and on occasion, he used a cane to walk. Eric's parents immediately booked a flight and came over to help caring for Eric, as well help Anne out with the new baby they had in the home. On November 30th, the parents were like, "We're going to give you guys a little date night. You guys deserve to be alone. We've been here for, over a week, so we're just going to go out. You guys enjoy." The parents had been there for days and wanted just to give them some space for the evening. Some friends of both Anne and Eric had brought over some food, like some casseroles and some soups and stuff like that. So Eric and Anne were just going to have a quiet evening in and heat up some of the food that the friends had brought over. So Anne told the parents that they were just going to stay in and she was going to heat up the food, no big deal. They were finally excited not to have any medical staff, no family, just relax and enjoy the evening. Well, this took a very left turn as Eric became extremely ill again. He had the same symptoms he had before, but seemed to be even worse than before. So Anne loads him in the car, lets the parents know that they are headed back to the hospital. The parents, of course, are extremely shocked because they had just left him and he was doing better. So they were just as shocked and concerned. They go back to the hospital, they run all their tests again. This is when it was revealed that Eric had very high levels of arsenic in his blood. Arsenic? How did he get arsenic in his system? How did this happen? He works at a lab, so of course they think maybe he got it from there somehow. Somehow he was exposed and he wasn't aware that he was. And after the doctors reviewed Eric's chart from his visit the week prior, they seen that it was discovered he actually had high levels the first time he went to the hospital, but because of a mix-up with the lab or some communication issues between the lab and the doctors, it was never recognized the first time he was there. The doctors concerned with the high levels and Eric stating he didn't work with arsenic in the lab, the doctors decide to get the police involved to figure out what was going on with these high levels of arsenic that Eric cannot explain. Eric was very weak and frankly, he was just out of it. He was not a lot of help to the investigators when they tried to ask him questions. A few times they were able to get him to speak. Eric would just confirm he doesn't know where it came from. He doesn't know where he came in contact with it, and he doesn't have any enemies he knew about that would ever want to poison him. Are you guys thinking what I'm thinking? The Aqua Tofana woman came back from the dead? No. On December 2nd, before the sun could even rise, Eric Miller's body gave out on him and he passed away. He was only 30 years old. The investigators assigned to this case stepped up their investigation and got a search warrant for his house to see if they could find any source of high levels of arsenic. They took in all the liquids they could find from the house and tested the items. Items such as shampoos, laundry soap, dish soap, hand soap, all the liquidy items that potentially could have been the cause. As well, they took a bunch of food in, but the investigators would be left scratching their heads because they couldn't find anything from the home that had traces of arsenic. So with no luck with the home, they decide to check the lab where he worked at. Their thought was he could have been exposed on accident. Even though he said he didn't work with arsenic, they want to rule it out completely. On top of that, Eric hadn't returned to work since he fell ill the first time. Investigators show up at his lab and the lab would confirm they don't use arsenic and Eric didn't work with arsenic, so it couldn't have come from there. Even then, the investigators search around, they find nothing. They leave, again, scratching their heads. Investigators really didn't think it was accidental that he got arsenic in his system because his levels were way too high for this to be likely. They were thinking he had received at least 2 to 3 large doses of arsenic in the time from when he was in the hospital the first time because of the dramatic increase of arsenic in his system. The officers had a few suspects in mind, and these suspects had access to arsenic and all the means to do the crime. But the officers were having a hard time finding a motive. They considered that competing scientists could have did him in because of his position. Apparently, his position was pretty prestigious, and others might want to off him so they could slip in and take his spot. They asked Anne if there was someone that would want to hurt Eric. She couldn't think of anyone. Police were looking into his computer, his emails. He's asking everyone if they knew if Eric was threatened by anyone or if they knew anyone that could be capable of doing this. They were coming coming up empty. So Eric has passed and Anne is dealing with the loss. The police question her, but of course, we know here that the spouse is the first person police look at. They were not really finding a motive with Anne. Eric didn't have a huge life insurance policy, and everyone said that they were happily married. So they continue their investigation. Anne leaves after being questioned by the police and proceeds to call a friend and state that she is worried they are looking at her for his death. The police had discovered arsenic at her lab. They did a search of her lab, and that's what they found. So as you can imagine, Anne is getting a little sweaty at this point and was talking it through with her friend. I know that friend was like, sweetie, it doesn't look good. The one thing the investigators couldn't figure out is that Eric wasn't with Anne the first time he got sick. It would only take 30 minutes to kick in after he was dosed, 60 minutes max. They were at the bowling alley longer than that, and Anne wasn't there. The investigators wanted to touch base with the people that Eric was with, the men that the guys' night out. The investigators wanted to talk to them just to see if they had any information about the evening. One of the men stated that they had all shared a pitcher of beer. One of the guys went to go get the beer and came back and all of the glasses were full. The guys didn't think anything of it and the guy just handed each of the guys beer. One of the friends did mention that when Eric took a drink of his beer, he stated, "It tastes funny." All the other guys didn't seem to have the same problem, so one of the guys said that it's just bowling alley beer, and Eric dropped the subject and they continued on with their evening. He said that Eric had only drank about half of the beer because he had accidentally spilled it. So the investigators are finally onto a solid lead. He didn't pour his own beer and stated it tasted funny. Yeah, that sounds real fishy. They of course want to know who poured the beer. This is when they discovered it was Daryl Willard. Daryl was a friend of Anne's, a special friend. Anne and Daryl worked at the same company and seemed to be friends at work, others would say, but there was talk that maybe there was more than just a friendship. Co-workers would say that Daryl was infatuated with Anne. The investigators then go back to Anne and ask her if the rumors were true and get more information or her side of the story about Daryl. But Anne was fed up with the constant questioning of her, so 1 week after Eric's death, Anne completely stops cooperating altogether. She hired 2 high-profile attorneys and told the investigators to go to them if they have some questions. The investigators are extremely confused at what she was doing. They talked to Eric's family about Anne, and they were all huge supporters of Anne and stated that they were happy in their relationship and she could not be responsible. Very supportive to Anne from the beginning. They would also comment they seen her at the funeral. They seen all of the emotions that she had about losing her husband, so found it really unbelievable that she could ever hurt her husband. They again supported Anne and reassured the investigators she only got an attorney to protect herself. The family would also say that the Christmas after his death, Anne asked if she and her daughter could come over and stay at their house to spend Christmas in Eric's childhood bedroom in the home for the holidays. The family thought this was just remarkable and sweet. They welcomed her with open arms. So the investigators are not getting anywhere with Anne, so they are trying to get to Daryl, the co-worker of Anne. They want to know what he has to say about the night he got sick or any other information that Daryl could give. Daryl seemed to be avoiding the police. The investigators had already talked to all the other people that were at the bowling alley, all the other men, but Daryl just wasn't getting back after several attempts from the officers. The officers are really focusing in on him after this point. Can you blame him? I mean, he's infatuated with Anne and he's the one that poured the beer. Yeah, they aren't going to just go away because he doesn't want to talk to them and isn't answering him. So they start their investigation into Daryl. They pull his phone records and found that there were several calls between Daryl and Ann. Not only was Daryl calling Ann, but Ann was calling him as well. This was not an infatuation. This was a full-on affair between the two. Daryl isn't getting back to them and Ann is lawyering up. It's not looking good for the two. Just to give you an idea of what the investigators found, they had called each other over 120 times in a couple of month time frame. A lot of calls were coming and going before he got sick both times. After Eric passed away, guess who Ann called? Yes, she called Daryl and talked to him for 24 minutes. They also found out that on November 10th, when she told her family she was going on a business trip, she was actually shacked up in a hotel room with Daryl. They both were on the same flight, sitting next to each other, headed to Chicago. Daryl and his wife, yes, Daryl is married as well, were on an incline in their relationship. So Daryl told his wife, "Sorry, Yvette, I need some space." Space, my butt. He was with Ann at the Ritz-Carlton living it up. The investigators also found emails between the two that were a bit spicy, that appeared to be more than just a friendship between the two. While checking Ann's computer, they discovered that Daryl was not the only other man she was talking to. She was also communicating with another man, but this man lived across the country and wasn't in the area, so he never made the suspect list, but did show that Ann wasn't a great wife despite what others were saying about her. Daryl's wife would say she thought maybe Daryl was having an affair. She didn't know for sure, but it did cross her mind. Eric, Ann's husband, however, never knew that Ann was cheating. At least he never made mention of it, not to his family, not to his friends. So it wasn't believed that he thought that she was having an affair. Eric did say that he was a bit uncomfortable with Ann working so late with a lab full of men, but that was the extent of his suspicion or jealousy. So this is why Ann said he should go out with her coworkers to get to know them. So that night that they went bowling, that was actually encouraged by Ann. Get to know my coworkers, babe. I'm not having an affair with any of them. No, the investigators are still hard at work trying to put the pieces together to figure out what was going on. It's a bit strange that after a night out with Ann's lover, he gets sick. And another time while Ann and Eric were alone in the home, the investigators, armed with this information, decide they are going to reveal this information to the couple on the same day. It's mid-January 2001. Eric's family just happened to be visiting Ann and the baby. It was the baby's first birthday, so they were in town for the baby's birthday. The officers arrive at Ann's house, knock on the door, she answers, and the officers just come out with it. "Are you having an affair with Daryl?" Ann, like a 2-year-old hiding from, trying to avoid taking medicine or something, ran up the stairs and hid from the officers. Eric's family were just standing there completely shocked by the accusation, and as you can imagine, were very hurt because the Ann they knew and loved is now a person they don't recognize. But Ann's not going down without a fight. She tries to reassure Eric's family that this just wasn't true. They were trying to add details to the case, but it wasn't true. That she did know Daryl, but he was obsessed with her and was actually stalking her. That it was Daryl that was trying to start a relationship, and the police must just have their facts wrong. But the damage has already been done, and the seed has been planted for Eric's family. Could Ann have done this to be with her lover? They now went to Daryl Willard's house, but they had a search warrant with them on this visit. They were doing a bit more than just asking a few questions, but one of the officers made a comment to Daryl. He said, "It looks like a woman had used you." Said he thinks he's right, but he wasn't going to say any more and he needed to call his lawyer. Isn't that interesting that he said, "I think you're right"? Interesting. Rick was obtained a few days prior to the search, and they had a meeting scheduled for the following day. So Daryl was not blindsided, and he knew he was kind of in trouble. Daryl didn't say anything further to the police, but he did talk to his wife, Yvette. He stated to her after Eric's death, he and Anne were indeed having an affair. She already suspected there was an affair, and she even wondered at times if it was Anne. She noticed he spoke about Anne a bit different than he talked about his other co-workers, and often her name would be brought up. She noticed that when he did talk about Anne more often, he also started to take better care of himself, splashing that cologne on or shaving more or regularly showering, I guess, or getting that weekly haircut that he usually let go for 2 weeks. On top of that, Daryl and Yvette started arguing more than they typically did. Their marriage seemed to be on the back burner for Daryl, and now that the police had shown up at the door, things went from bad to worse. The officers took papers and the computers from the home as evidence. Yvette, even though she thought her husband was a cheater, did not and could not accept he had anything to do with Eric's death. I bet if you ask Yvette today, she would say he didn't do it. I was listening to an amazing podcast on this case, and what's funny is the podcaster said, she said Yvette was remarkable for standing by her husband, but if it were her husband cheating on her, I would call the FBI and turn him in as the Zodiac killer, even if he wasn't born yet to commit the crimes. That's between him and the police to figure out. He's going down. It was so funny. Anyways, that's just kind of a sidetrack. It made me laugh. But Yvette wasn't a naive person and understood that it doesn't look good. But she also stated that the man she knew, while a cheater, was not capable of hurting another person. He just wasn't a killer. The next morning after the home was searched, she talked to Daryl a bit before they headed out for the door for the day. Daryl had his appointment for later that afternoon with his attorney, so they were both a bit on edge with everything going on, as you can imagine. What happened next, Yvette would never have suspected Daryl would do. She comes home, opens the garage, and there she found Daryl's lifeless body. She calls 911 to report her husband had taken his own life. Daryl did leave a handwritten note. On the note, he did state that he didn't have anything to do with Eric's death. Yvette believes that, but the police believe this is a two-man job between him and Anne. They were still missing a few pieces to the puzzle. After this happened, Anne moved her and her daughter to Wilmington, North Carolina, to get a fresh start in a new area. This was about 120 miles away from Raleigh. This was very surprising to Eric's family, who were more and more becoming suspicious of Anne and her story. Eric's family was aware of the email and phone calls between the two, so Eric's sister finally got enough courage to confront Anne about those emails to and from her and Daryl. She asked Anne about the stalking she claimed Daryl was doing to her. Anne responded and said he clearly was obsessed. The sister quickly said, "But the officer said you were responding," and Anne, in her 2-year-old fashion again, cowardly stated, "What do you want from me? What do you want me to say?" Eric's family was also questioning why Anne was so insistent to get Eric's body cremated. The family didn't want that, but because Anne was the wife, she gets the end say in the situation. This wasn't what they wanted for their son Eric. This wasn't what they thought their son Eric would want as well. Anne insisted that she alone, as well as her daughter, would get the ashes, have a grave site, and the family could come and visit whenever they would like. It made more sense before Anne moved her and her daughter 2 hours further away, just months after the death of Eric, and then just left his ashes behind. It seemed like she was starting over completely. Them surprised by her actions, but their mouths would hit the floor when they find out the results of the autopsy report. In May 2001, they find out that Eric was indeed poisoned with arsenic. The compound they found was identical to what was used in Anne's lab at work. After they examined the hair on Eric, they could tell he was first poisoned 4 months prior to his death. This proved that whoever poisoned Eric had started 4 months before the fatal dose was given, before the affair with Daryl even began. This would rule out the obsessed theory Anne would like you to believe. The investigators theorized that the first couple of doses were trial runs to see how much it would take, and that the first couple of doses were small amounts that wouldn't even require a hospital stay. They also pieced together that Eric most likely dosed 2 to 3 times in November-December timeframe. He died in December of 2000. The fatal dose was not at the bowling alley, not at the home where Anne and Eric shared a meal, rather was while he was in the hospital the second time. He's hooked up to machines, hanging on to his life. His family are crying and they're concerned, and someone doses this poor man to finish the job. It's just disgusting. And guess who wasn't at the hospital when that dose was given? Daryl. Daryl was not at the hospital. Who is left in the equation? Anne. Eric's family were the only other people that was at the hospital. The hospital was actually limiting who could see him because they didn't know what was wrong with him. Armed with this information, the family dropped all support for Anne. They are now convinced that she was the culprit. All along, she has been feeding them the line that her obsessed coworker did it. They now were calling BS and didn't believe anything Anne had to say. He wasn't at the hospital. There was no way. The police department thought they had the case in the bag, but the DA's office said it was all circumstantial and they needed more evidence. So the lead detective was up for the challenge and went back through the entire case with fresh eyes to gather as much information as he could to charge Anne. He then came across Daryl's widow's statement she made. She told the detective that Daryl was told by his attorney that Daryl could be facing attempted murder charges. That led to one question the detective wanted to answer. What did Daryl say to his attorney for him to say that to Yvette? So the detective called the attorney, and the attorney said he wasn't going to give them any information. Of course he's not. Attorneys typically do not just divulge this information. The detective thought maybe he would say something. It was a shot in the dark, but client-attorney privilege still counts after death. So the attorney was not going to give up his career to shed secrets to convict Anne. Because even in death, the privilege still exists, they were not going to get anything from him. Yvette was the executor of the estate and was willing to waive privilege, but even then it wouldn't mean much because it wasn't in Daryl's will stating she could do such things. The detective said, F all that, I'm going to take Rick Gammon, the attorney, to court. The detective was arguing that Daryl had the conversation about the visit to the attorney with another, his wife. So this voids privilege. Daryl did repeat some of the conversation, but not all of it. So the detective took his shot. But in the end, all it means is that Yvette could repeat the part of conversation that Daryl told her. The attorney didn't have to comment, agree, or disagree with her statement. The state didn't tell Yvette what they were trying to get anyway. They wanted to know what he didn't tell her, not what he actually told her. The information they wanted was not against Daryl. He's already gone. They wanted information on what he said about Anne. Ah, clever, right? They pled their case to the judge that there were a third-party connection, being Anne, due to the affair and the circumstances of when Eric got sick the first time. The judge ends up siding with the state. So in March of 2003, yes, it is almost 3 years later, they were able to get some more information about Anne's involvement based on conversations with Daryl and his attorney. But the judge stated that the attorney had to tell the judge what he knew and not the DA's office. Then the judge could decide if the information was valid or not and what the DA's office was trying to accomplish, that the judge will work with the DA's office if it's applicable. Rick, the attorney, complied and gave the judge an affidavit with the information requested. After reviewing it, after the judge reviewed it, surprise, surprise, the judge stated the DA's office can have the information. It was compelling information regarding Anne. Rick appealed the decision, the attorney, but it was rejected. Now we are at May 2004, when the Supreme Court ruled that Rick Gammon had to turn over the information. I give it to Rick Gammon. He was really fighting for his client, but in the end, information Rick had wasn't going to implicate Daryl anyways, so he had to give this information over. Rick stated that his client Daryl met Anne in the parking lot of the hospital. Anne was crying hysterically and stated that she had just injected her husband with a lethal dose of arsenic into Eric's IV. He asked her why. Why did you do this? And she responded, she didn't know. Daryl would comment that maybe Anne did it because she wanted to end Eric's suffering. Love is blind, but it's not that blind. She was trying to kill him. Hello? Daryl denied any role in Eric's murder. Just for context, this conversation would happen before the autopsy results. So the police already knew that Eric was dosed right before his death. Now they had information that Anne admitted to Daryl and shared this information. Daryl shared this information with his attorney. Armed with this information, the DA's office has a lot now. Anne has access to arsenic. Anne was the only one in the hospital other than Eric's family, and now it is being said that Anne admitted to dosing him. They limited access to Eric's room because he was so sick. Who did Eric ask for? Yes, Anne. It breaks my heart that Eric had no idea that his wife was a monster. She was the only person that had access to Eric's room. Her name was on the board of the room. September 2004, Anne has now remarried, changing her name to Ann Kontz. I wonder if her new husband had any idea her guilt or not. They end up arresting Anne, and 3 months later, she is given a $3 million bond. It was still a big question mark whether or not Rick Gammon's affidavit would be allowed into evidence. The DA's office was confident it would be, and the defense, of course, said, heck no, it won't. The defense was stating that Daryl had lied to Rick to save his own butt. So in the end, they would offer Anne a plea deal. November 2005, almost 5 years of Eric's death, Anne accepted the plea deal and pled guilty to second-degree murder. Her attorney read her statement for her, and it stated that she had deep regret. Yeah, right. And for 2 weeks in November 2000, she conspired with Daryl to poison her husband, Eric. Disregard the hair tests that say otherwise, but nevertheless, it's what Anne said. Anne answering the question as to why. Why did you want your husband offed? She would say she didn't know why. Some of these criminals' responses are just appalling. I am really curious as to why she did it. They were a well-off family with a beautiful new baby that Eric was absolutely in love with and cared for above and beyond just the average. He was a cutie on top of it. He wasn't a bad guy. He didn't have a huge life insurance policy. Why didn't she just divorce him? It's so bizarre she thought that her only solution ultimately landed her in prison. I was thinking maybe she didn't want to share custody. I don't know. Doesn't really make sense. And asked for forgiveness from God and the people she hurt. Denied. I don't know, but if I have to guess, Eric's dad said her statement was just empty words and did nothing to ease their minds. She couldn't even be bothered to ask for forgiveness herself. She went through her attorney to do it. So Anne, at the age of 35, was sentenced to 25 to 30 years in prison. Eric's family was okay with this sentence. Of course, they would have liked more time, but they didn't want to take the gamble of her getting out. They worried about Anne and Eric's daughter's safety. If Anne were to get off, who's to say she wouldn't do the same thing to the daughter? She couldn't explain the why about her husband, so who knows why, and her daughter could be the next target. The family were happy to make sure the daughter was protected with less time for Anne. What do you guys think about the note that Daryl left? When he stated he had nothing to do with Eric's death, I wonder if he really wasn't trying to kill him and that maybe he is the one that accidentally knocked over the beer that night. He just wanted to get him sick to tell Anne he tried to, but was actually backing out and didn't use all the poison. Eric did get pretty sick, don't get me wrong, so it's just a thought. In Daryl's note, he said he didn't have anything to do with it. But maybe he was thinking the hospital thing that Anne injected him. He wasn't responsible for that one. He didn't have to put that in there, so it's just odd that he mentioned that. It's just something that came to mind that stood out for me. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Thanks again to Kinder Beauty for sponsoring today's video. Don't forget to use my code KimberlyFlower50 for 50% off. Link is in the description. Thanks to all my channel members who continue to support me. Their names are on the screen. If you would like early access to new videos and decide the cases I cover next, you can do that by clicking the join button. Well, if you guys have made it to the end, you guys are rock stars and I love you to death. There are more true crime videos in my Captured Killers playlist if you would like to check them out. Either way, stay safe, my loves, and as always, remember, if you see something, say something, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.